Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Retro TV Playhouse, the show where I explore 20th century television. I'm your host, Tabitha. It is deep into autumn, and I'm going to be covering the semi-anthology buddy road drama series Route 66. What does that have to do with fall? Well, the pilot was called Black November, so yeah. Am I covering that episode? No. But that's not the point. The point is I have made a tenuous connection, and I'm going to roll with it. Route 66 is about two young guys with no family or ties besides each other, traveling around the country in their slick Corvette looking for a place to belong. Along the way, they meet people from all walks of life who are down on their luck. Sometimes they help them, sometimes all they can do is bear witness to their plight. Route 66 was the brainchild of writer Sterling Silliphant and producer Herbert B. Leonard. The duo had previously teamed up to create the series The Naked City based on the film which had came out a decade prior. Silliphant was born in Detroit in 1918. After graduating from the University of Southern California, he served in World War II as an Army lieutenant. When he was discharged, he got a job working for the Disney Company. And the poor guy had a segment for the Mickey Mouse Club called What I Want to Be, about different jobs kids might be interested in when they grow up. Well, only one segment ever aired, and it was about working for an airline as pilots and hostesses. Since we can't have women flying no commercial planes in the 1950s, they might run out of chocolate and nosedive into the ocean about it. Critics liked the segment, the kids did not. Due to the bad reception and clashing with the man behind the mouse himself, the segment was canceled and Silliphant was fired. The mouse has no mercy. But he was a talented writer and his career managed to thrive. He wrote for a lot of television series in the 50s like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Zane Grey Theater, and Perry Mason. He also wrote some films that you might be familiar with: Village of the Damned, In the Heat of the Night, Slender Thread, and 70s disaster classics The Towering Inferno and The Poseidon Adventure. As I said, he was a major driving force behind the first season of The Naked City. But the show was retooled after season 1, and he didn't have much to do with it after that. He still wrote some episodes, but his output was greatly reduced. He married 4 times total and had 4 children. He and his family moved to Bangkok in the 1980s, and he kept up his writing career. He passed away after a battle with prostate cancer in 1996. Herbert B. Leonard came up with the concept for Route 66 while having lunch with Silliphant one day. He was reminiscing about his days as a youth running around New York with a friend of his that had come from a much richer family. He thought about what it would be like if 2 guys like that hit the road and saw the country together. Right then, they began working out the series. They even had something of a backdoor pilot for it on The Naked City in the episode called 4 Sweet Corners. Before that, and before The Naked City, Leonard was best known, and perhaps still best known, for producing Rin Tin Tin, the dog. He also produced Circus Boy, the show that future Monkey star Mickey Dolenz was in as a child. Like Silliphant, he served in the military during World War II. He married 3 times and had a grand total of 7 children. That's just so many children. That's Von Trapp level of children. Leonard passed away in 2006 after fighting cancer. Now, how can I describe what Route 66 is? I found it frequently to be a very thoughtful show with memorable characters, fantastic acting, gorgeous on-location shooting, florid dialogue, all held together by 2 talented leading men. And other times I found it to be the most sexist thing I've ever seen in my life. Not that the show didn't explore female characters, they certainly did, and a lot of the times the show and the lead characters respected their autonomy. Unless they were hurting their husband's fifis by being too successful, or hurting their husband's fifis by not letting him be successful enough, or if they had a traditionally masculine job. Those women had to be put in line, which, thank God, am I right, boys? Also, when I said the show explored people from all walks of life, I, of course, meant white people. I can recall only one episode that featured a black supporting cast. Maybe there were more in the latter part of the series, but I'm less familiar with those episodes for reasons we'll get into. I still loved the show very, very much, and in many ways it was revolutionary. Certainly different than most of your average TV shows. but in other ways it was definitely a product of its time, you know what I mean? And it's dour, like much more dour than I was anticipating going into it. There are a couple of comedy episodes here and there. Journey to Nineveh with Buster Keaton is a silly but wonderful episode, as is Lizard's Leg and Owlet's Wing with Peter Lorre, Boris Karloff, and Lon Chaney Jr. as themselves. And there are some episodes that focus more on action than anything, but the action ones were more of the network wanting it than Leonard and Sylphant wanting it. But mostly it's a straight drama. I also mentioned that the series was shot on location. Not the first show to do it, but they weren't just filming on the streets of New York. They filmed the series all around the country. They used real locations and frequently hired locals for the smaller roles. The show is really a time capsule of American life in the 1960s. Shrimp trawlers in Louisiana, the waves of California, the canyons in Arizona, casinos in Nevada, ranches in Montana, rooftops in Philadelphia, and the mermaids of Weeki Wachee Springs. Honestly, all that alone is enough to make the show worthwhile. Luckily, the show has more going for it than just that. Mainly, its two stars, Martin Milner as former rich kid Todd Stiles and George Maharis as Hell's Kitchen orphan Buzz Murdoch. Maharis was the first actor cast. He was cast in the original backdoor pilot from The Naked City, though the premise was somewhat different at that time. In that episode, Maharis plays a soldier named Johnny who returns home to find his sister mixed up in a criminal ring. The buddy character was played by Roger Morris as Link Ridgway. Link ended up being the name of Glenn Corbett's character on Route 66, who replaced Maharis mid-season 3. I haven't watched the Naked Cities episode, but at the end, Johnny and Link hit the road together. Now, Robert Morris sadly passed away just a year later, before the series proper went into production. He was only 25 when he died, and he left behind a wife and child. I've read conflicting reports about his death. He either died of a cerebral hemorrhage or from an epileptic seizure, which led to asphyxiation. Either way, a tragedy. So Leonard and Sylphant needed a new actor, and they narrowed it down to two. Martin Milner and, get this, Robert Redford. Yeah, they went with Milner because Redford, quote, had a tendency to scream every time he got emotional. Interesting, that has not been my experience with Redford movies. I've always thought of him as a pretty reserved actor, but maybe I just haven't seen the right movies with him. In any case, at the time, Milner did have a lot more screen experience than Redford did. And since Maharis played Buzz as highly emotional and volatile, it makes sense to want someone calm and even to play opposite of him. So Martin Milner was cast as Todd Stiles. Redford did guest star in a season 2 episode, though, and I'm sure he's not crying over how his career turned out. Fun fact, Maharis did not like the fact that Milner got top billing. The producers said they were giving Milner the top spot because he was more well-known than Maharis was, to which Maharis replied, quote, "I've never heard of him," end quote. Now, George Maharis, in my opinion, was an amazing actor. He had a very intense quality about him, and I honestly think he deserved a bigger and better career. He should be talked about with the likes of James Dean and Montgomery Clift. He was brooding, he was beautiful, he was committed, he was nominated for an Emmy for his work on this show. He was born in Queens, and boy did he have a thick New York accent, which is just part of his appeal. He trained at the Actors Studio, so yes, he was a student of the method. He found pretty steady work on television and success on the stage. That's really where his name started to get around. I briefly mentioned that Maharis ended up leaving Route 66 in Season 3 and being replaced by Glenn Corbett. The reasons for his departure are complicated. Really depends on who you ask. What is certain is that during the filming of a Season 2 episode, Maharis contracted hepatitis B. He had to take the last few episodes of Season 2 off in order to recover. Here's where it splits. According to Maharis, he was told that when he came back to filming, his screen time would be greatly reduced for the good of his health. And he was good with that. But that's not what happened. His schedule starting in Season 3 was just as grueling as it had been before. And I did note that his Season 3 episodes, he ends up drenched in several of them, which leads me to believe his side of the story. In short, Maharis claims he had to leave the show for the good of his health. The producers claim that he was being a diva and thought he was too good for the show. Then there's the fact that Maharis was a gay man, and there have been rumors about the producers finding out and not wanting a gay man as their lead heartthrob on the show. I mean, I don't not believe that. After Route 66, Maharis sadly had a brief, lackluster film career, although I do like The Satan Bug. You guys should check that one out. He ended up relying a lot on television, guest roles, TV movies, and he did try his hand at one more series called The Most Deadly Game, but that only lasted 13 episodes. He was arrested twice for lewd conduct and sex perversion, getting caught with men. He never spoke about his sexuality, which is entirely his right. The only thing I've heard him comment on is that the phone stopped ringing after the arrests. His career pretty much stalled, which sucks, and he passed away just last year at age 94. He deserved better, and I will die on that hill. You're probably more familiar with Martin Milner thanks to his other hit show, Adam 12, a show that I find mostly terribly dull, and I love buddy cop shows. At least it's only a half hour. Milner was born in Detroit. His parents were part of show business. His mother was a dancer with the Paramount Theater circuit, and his father was a film distributor. He started his on-screen career when he was only 15 in the movie Life with Father. He worked in movies for a long time, like The Gunfight at the OK Corral, The Sweet Smell of Success, and 13 Ghosts. So, I'm sorry, George. I think the producers had a point about Martin being better known than you. After Route 66, he carried on as he had before, television and film, and he had a great career in my opinion. He was married to his wife Judy from 1957 up until he passed away. The couple had 4 children. Milner died in 2015. Milner's character, Todd Stiles, is ostensibly the main character, I guess, since he does get top billing. Frankly, I think they should have just been listed together, or maybe switch it up every week like they did on Bonanza, because Buzz has the much flashier role, and Maharis can sometimes overwhelm Milner. Still, I don't think Milner is a bad actor. I think he was quite good. I just happen to think Maharis was great. Anyway, Todd Stiles was a privileged guy. His father was rich and owned a shipping business that ran out of the East River in New York. And his dad must have been a good man because Todd turned out very well. But he apparently wasn't that good of a businessman because when he suddenly dies before the pilot, it turns out the business was in the toilet. Todd's wealth was gone along with his father. All he had left was the Corvette that the old man left him. But he never wallows in self-pity over suddenly being poor and having to give up on finishing college. He was studying at Yale when his father passed. He never thinks he's better than the impoverished people he meets. He doesn't think he's better than Buzz. He's willing to do the hard work. He's a good guy. He's quiet and thoughtful. But he's also young and he likes to go out, date around, race cars, and fly planes. He loved his father and always speaks glowingly of him. He seems to enjoy running a business, and he almost settles down to do just that a couple of times. In fact, I think that's what he ends up doing in the finale, along with getting married. I think. I don't know. I haven't watched it. He's loyal, he's calm, he weathers the storm that is Buzz Murdoch very well. He can lose his temper, of course, but it doesn't happen often. Where Buzz is loud and brash, Todd can convey it all with a look. He gets into his fair share of fights, but overall, I think he's a guy your parents would be glad you brought home. And then there's Buzz Murdoch. He has no idea who his parents are. He doesn't even know when his exact birthday is. He was raised in an orphanage and has severe mommy issues, as evidenced by his semi-frequent relationships with older women. He has a quick temper that gets him into trouble, but in some ways he's very wise. He met Todd when he worked for his father's company. He's much quicker than Todd to insert himself into other people's problems and try to help, probably because he knows how tough and lonely life can be. Buzz enjoys a lot of the same things that Todd does, going out, dating, music. And more than anything, he wants to live in the moment and experience every feeling he has to its fullest. The two have no one in the world apart from each other. As Buzz said, quote, "Home is where we park the car," end quote. They have no end date in mind to their travels. They can't even fully explain just what it is they're looking for. Just a sense of belonging, a place where they can put down roots, a place to call home. They're wandering. They're living. Now, the networks were not interested in picking up this series. Leonard sunk his own money in so that they could shoot the pilot on their own. And that pilot, Black November, does look and feel slightly different from the series proper, but it's a strong hour of television. So strong that CBS ended up picking it up. Due to the show being about two guys on a road trip, writer Jack Kerouac wanted to sue them for ripping off his book On the Road. He was correctly talked out of this. And in the interest of due diligence, I read On the Road. It is nothing like Route 66. Kerouac had no case, in my opinion. This has nothing to do with this episode I'm covering, but damn it, I read that whole dull book, so I'm bringing it up here. The episode I am covering today is Season 1, Episode 13, The Quick and the Dead. The story was by Charles Beaumont and Jerry Soule, and the teleplay was by Sterling Silliphant. It was directed by Alvin Gasner. The name Charles Beaumont might sound familiar to you because he was known as Twilight Zone's Magic Man. He wrote some wonderful classic episodes of that show, like Perchance to Dream, The Howling Man, Long Distance Call, Shadow Play, and The Jungle. He wrote a couple of novels, a ton of short stories, lots of teleplays, and some screenplays. Most of them are genre pieces. He was a very prolific and talented writer. Unfortunately, he contracted a strange and rare illness that took his life when he was only 38 in 1967. The guess is that he suffered from a combination of Alzheimer's disease and Pick's disease, but as far as I understand it, an official diagnosis has not been discovered. Like, for certain. As his illness progressed, he had friends helping him and then outright ghostwriting for him, and one of those friends was Jerry Soule, the other story credit on this episode. Like his friends, Soule wrote for multiple mediums: novels, nonfiction, television, and films. He wrote 3 episodes of Star Trek, that's pretty cool. He wrote for Alfred Hitchcock Presents, General Electric Theater, The Man from Atlantis, and The Invaders. Soule passed away in 2002 at age 88. The Quick and the Dead is both Soule's and Beaumont's only Route 66 credit, and it was written in 1961, so this would have been before Beaumont's health started to fail him, so I'm going to assume that this was a true collaboration between them. Director Alvin Gasner worked as a second unit director in the 1940s. In fact, he was the assistant director on the 1946 Best Picture winner Going My Way. Fun fact. He did direct some films on his own, but he worked a lot in television. He did 9 episodes of Route 66, including the 2-part series finale. He also did Lost in Space, Wild Wild West, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Rookies, and Ironside. Gasner retired to Hawaii and passed away there in 2009 at age 97. The episode The Quick and the Dead aired on January 13th, 1961. It ran against an episode of The Detectives on NBC, and on ABC it ran against The Flintstones and the first half of 77 Sunset Strip. That is my series background, so let's get into the episode. The IMDb synopsis for The Quick and the Dead reads, Todd and Buzz are in California for the Riverside Grand Prix auto races, which Todd decides to enter in the stock class. Doing well in practice, he is asked to drive in the main event. After being drawn into a conflict between a veteran driver, his daughter, and second wife, Todd is nearly rerouted in more ways than one. Okay. We start with a woman named Bea Webster having a nightmare about her husband Cord crashing his race car. She wakes up screaming and it alerts her husband in the bed next over, because they are a respectable married couple and would never do anything as sinful as sleep in the same bed. You gotta leave room for Jesus. Always. The woman's stepdaughter Katie comes in and mocks her upset stepmother. Her dad warns her to knock it off, but Bea tries to explain her dream to Katie. That Cord's car was leading the race, but then it flipped and caught fire, and because of that, she doesn't want Cord to race the following Sunday. Cord comforts his wife and says that he is going to race and he'll win. It was just a dream, don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. Katie looks annoyed, Bea is unconvinced. So here's the thing about steps. Relationships between them can be complicated. I've dealt with step-parents every which way, and I have a lot of baggage because of it. I'm not saying that all step-parents are evil, of course that's not the case. But my own experience leaves me biased against them and taking Katie's side on principle. For now. The jazzy theme kicks in and our opening credits play over Todd and Buzz cruising down the road. They're in Riverside, California, home of the United States Grand Prix. They pull up by a racetrack and Todd is enthralled. He wants to race. Huge, excited grin on his face, he speculates that he could be like the running llamas of Tibet, because they never stop running just for the love of it. I told you the dialogue in this show, it gets pretty flowery. Buzz teases him a bit, but Todd's not even hearing him. He only has eyes for the track, and if he enters and wins, the first prize is $1,500. Sure, but on the other hand, Buzz reminds him, if he enters, he could also crash and burn. Quite literally. So I think this little exchange is probably what the creatives and Maharis compromised on, because according to Maharis, in the original script, Buzz is against Todd racing at all because he thinks it's too dangerous. Maharis responded to this with, quote, "I'm not his mother. Buzz would simply say go for it and help him. He'd be behind him 100%. He'd wish he could do it himself, but he wouldn't stop someone else," end quote. I think that's fair and consistent with who Buzz is as a character. Anyway, Todd's not sure he's even good enough to qualify, but Buzz encourages him to at least give it a try since he obviously wants to. Meanwhile, Katie and Cord are working on his car when Bee pulls up. Katie is again visibly annoyed to see her. Bee tries to bond with her, and Katie does apologize for the night before, but this is not true peace between them. While Todd is making some adjustments to the Corvette, Buzz decides he needs to find a little action of his own. Quote, "Things are moving around here, so I guess I'll just move with them," end quote. God, I love the way they talk. So Todd sees about entering the race. He used to race with his dad when he was younger, so he does have some experience. While he's busy doing that, Buzz sees the action he's been looking for in Miss Grand Prix, Roxy, who's doing a photo shoot. She spots him and instantly hops off the car and starts making out with him. Her manager breaks them up and really treats her like a piece of meat by using a whistle to summon her, like a dog. But it's funny, you see. Roxy will be the comic relief for this episode. She wants a break from her photo shoot to go off with Buzz, and so off they go. She tells him that she tries to follow her impulses, but they move so fast she can't keep up with them. In our main plot, Bee takes notice of Todd's driving and wonders to their friend, mechanic, servant, Jeff, that maybe Todd can race Cord's car. That way he'll die instead of Cord. I mean, she doesn't say that last part, but that's the implication now, isn't it? So this isn't the only episode of this series to dabble into something supernatural like premonitions. They encounter a psychic later who gets Todd all freaked out, and also Todd romances a mermaid. Maybe. Possibly she's a mermaid. This show is mostly very grounded in reality, but every now and then they get a little weird with it. And this story was come up with by two Twilight Zone writers, so I guess that makes sense. Anyway, Buzz and Roxy are keeping themselves busy at the hotel pool, which is actually great because it means that Buzz is all wet and shirtless and beautiful. But that buzzkill of a manager shows up looking for Roxy. The pair dive under the water to hide from him. The manager goes inside looking for them with his trusty whistle when who should be at the bar but Todd. He approaches him and he's like, "I know the guy who stole my model is with you." Again, as if Roxy is an object, and now as if Todd's committed a crime or something. Todd's like, "Yeah, this is not my problem and I don't know where Buzz is." The manager leaves and Todd spies a little action of his own. And just as he's cozying up to a young lady, Bee shows up and tells the girl to piss off. And Todd's like, but, my blue balls! Still, he's amenable to boning Bee instead until she tells him that she's Mrs. Cord Webster. Her proposition is about business, not pleasure. She asks him about coming down to check out their car. You know, give it a whirl. She can make his dream come true and keep one of hers from coming true. He goes with her to see the car, and he is salivating over it, but he says that her husband's a great driver, and there's no way he could ever measure up. Yes, she counters, but he's also 53 years old. 53? Oh, well in that case, let's just take him out back and shoot him. Still, Todd doesn't know if he's good enough. Jeff tells him to take the car around and find out. He agrees, and off he goes. Well, he ends up breaking the track record his first time out, because of course he does. Jeff and Bee are thrilled, and Todd feels great. Until Katie spots him and orders him out of their car. And she tries to slap him about it, but Todd manages to stop her. Girl! She lets Todd know that they don't want or need him. And she's like, Daddy, you're not going to let this guy drive our car, are you? Daddy! Cord says he just wants to talk to him, and Katie stomps off like a 4-year-old. That night at the hotel, Roxy's manager is still wandering around the courtyard whistling for her. Buzz watches him with amusement from the window. He's also puzzled about Todd taking over Cord's car. And I guess to Bee's credit, she did tell Todd about her nightmare, so he knows what he's getting into. And Todd's not the type to get carried away by silly superstition. Until he is, of course, but that's another episode. Buzz is heading out to meet Roxy, who he has stashed, his words, not mine, in the library. Apparently they did have some conversation because he knows that she wants to be an entomologist, and her pet name for Buzz is her eastern horn beetle. Aww. Beauty and brains. I think you've got a winner here, Buzz. He again asks Todd if he's really serious about driving. Is this about the car, or is this about Katie? Todd asks if it really shows. I'm sorry, what? He barely interacted with Katie, and she was rude to him the entire time. Plus, she tried to hit him, and he's crushing on her? And here I thought Buzz had questionable taste. Todd even says, did you ever see a girl just once and right away know it's the right girl? Todd, for God's sake. He does this again in a season 3 episode, but that one's even worse because he and that woman don't even speak. He literally just looks at her and declares he's in love with her and she's the one. He ends up making a total ass of himself there too. Anyway, just as Buzz leaves, Katie enters. She's dressed to the nines and is all apologetic toward Todd and says she wants to go out with him. He's more than happy to do that. On their date, Katie asks Todd how much he knows about girls. Well, clearly not much. She tells him she really took him out just to ask him not to drive. And Bee's just a dirty liar. This is her dad's life, and how dare Bee try to ruin that for him? She's destroying him. She says, quote, help me keep my father, end quote. Yeah, that's what this is really about. Not the race. Jealousy. Her dad's got a wife, and we don't know how long her mom's been out of the picture, but clearly Katie does not want to share his attention. And she feels that racing is their thing, I suppose, and Bee's trying to take that away from them. Todd agrees, and she kisses him. The next day, Buzz comes down to join Todd at the racetrack, and to tell him that he's glad he's decided not to drive Cord's car. Bee finds them, and is not quite so glad that Todd changed his mind. Or rather, that Katie changed his mind. She's like, what the fuck? You promised! Katie's the one who's lying! Bee has encouraged Cord to keep designing and engineering. It's just that she doesn't want him to race because she's afraid for his life. She doesn't want to lose him. And now Todd has to ponder which pair of boobies is telling him the truth. How can he know? She, Todd, and Buzz watch Cord race the qualifier. Katie is watching nearby with Jeff, just happy as can be. He's doing good, but he does end up spinning out. He's totally fine, but Bee uses this as proof that his reflexes are too slow and he's too old to be racing anymore. That evening, the Webster family and Jeff, whoever he is, are sitting down to a very dark dinner. Seriously, turn on some lights. Somebody. And Katie just starts baiting Bee. She wants to know if Cord's gonna race tomorrow. Cord says he wants to drive, but he won't go against Bee's wishes, so if she doesn't want him to, he won't. Katie demands to know what Bee's ever done for him and what gives her the right to have any say in what she does. Bee stays remarkably calm during all of this and only responds that she loves Katie too, not just her dad. She isn't going to force Cord into anything, and then she leaves. And Cord goes to follow, but Katie tells him to just let her go. Instead, Cord says that he's going to let her go, and that Todd will be racing in his car the next day. Ooh, chose the wife over the daughter. Ouch. Meanwhile, Todd and Buzz are out with Roxy, and there's a funny moment where Roxy asks Todd if Buzz reminds him of an eastern horn beetle. I looked those up, by the way. Hideous. This little cute camaraderie is interrupted because, uh-oh, here comes Katie. And Todd follows her like a little puppy. She's like, let's go to Mexico, and he's like, okay, because he's an idiot. Buzz overhears this and gets a little pissy, but tells him to go on. Before they leave, Todd gets paged, but Katie knows what the message is about and is like, nope, don't take the message. Let's just go. Right now. Right now. And he does. Who would do that? Why would you do that? Todd, think. They go outside and she feeds him some more BS lines, and then she suggests when we get to Mexico, we should get married. And again, he's like, okay. Unbelievable. The only thing that gives him pause is that he wants to grab Buzz to be his best man, and she's like, no outsiders, just us. Todd defends his position by claiming that Buzz isn't an outsider to him, he's his buddy. Aww. Before they can hash it out anymore, Buzz is suddenly there, and he is pissed. He overheard enough and starts laying into Todd. On the one hand, calm down, dude. As Maharis himself claimed, Buzz isn't Todd's mother. Todd can do what he likes, even if it's a very dumb decision. On the other hand, he rightfully calls Katie out on not giving a shit about Todd. Just that she's using him to keep him away from the race, which he knows for a fact because he took Todd's message. And he's got Jeff with him all of a sudden as proof. Jeff confirms that what Buzz is saying is true, and Cord wants Todd to drive. And Todd takes this very well for a man who just said he was in love with Katie and was totally willing to run off to marry her. He just walks off with Buzz, and Katie runs away in tears. And damn you, Katie, for making me take the side of the stepmother, but you are a little sociopath, and maybe Bee is being silly about her dream, but she's not being malicious towards you or anybody else. I mean, yeah, I guess she's using Todd too, but at least she's upfront about that. She's been very cool about your constant blatant disrespect, and frankly, so has your dad. Ugh. Damn it, Katie. Anyway, the next day is the big race. The boys are on the track, and Todd is in Cord's car getting ready to head out. Buzz wishes him luck. There is no trace of heartbreak at all in Todd. Katie might as well have never existed for him. Okay. Cars over hose, I guess? The race begins, and Buzz asks Bee if she's sure she saw her husband crash in her nightmare, or just any driver in that car. Buzz, it's a little late to be questioning that now, isn't it? The race has started. Anyway, she says she's been asking herself that. Yeah, sure you have, Bee. Wasn't the whole point of this to basically save Cord and sacrifice whoever else you got to take his place? In any case, no one makes a move to stop the race. Suddenly, Katie appears, having gone through all of her character development off-screen. She knows she was acting selfish and destructive and is ready to humble herself before her dad and stepmom. But not Todd. She apparently feels no remorse about what she did to him. But that's fine because Todd doesn't seem to care anymore either. She approaches Cord and Bee, and they all forgive each other now, so they're a big happy family. Super. Katie, who has been truly awful this whole episode, has an off-screen revelation about herself, and that's it. All's well that ends well. Honestly, this part of the episode is rushed and unsatisfying. Back to the race, Bee's nightmare appears to be coming true. Oil starts spitting out of the car directly into Todd's face. Is oil up there? Isn't the oil further? I don't know from cars. The car starts smoking, and Todd manages to come to a stop just as it catches fire. The Webster family goes running towards him, but Buzz gets there first and pulls him from the car. But luckily, he's not hurt. So Bee gets to live without blood on her hands. They lost the race, but they did come in third. But, as Ricky Bobby says, if you ain't first, you're last. And that's good enough for Roxy, who also appears out of nowhere to start making out with Todd. Sorry, Buzz. Roxy's a rolling stone. But hey, it's all in good fun. Buzz even whistles. The episode ends long after the crowds have gone, and it's just Todd and Buzz pulling away in the vet. On their way to anywhere and everywhere. The end. For the most part, I really enjoy this episode. It's one of the more interesting ones, I think. I like the racing footage we get. There's something about old-timey races that fascinates me. I don't know why. I think there's a good balance between the guest characters and Todd and Buzz. There are many episodes where Todd and Buzz are just barely there on the periphery, and that can be fine, but I tend to prefer when they're more directly involved in the story. The Roxy stuff was kind of funny, but kind of icky too. It was nice to see Buzz just being loose and having fun. As I said, he can get really intense. The quote-unquote love story was the weakest part of the episode. We're supposed to believe that Todd was willing to run off to Mexico to elope with this woman he's known for 2 days, and when he finds out she's just been using him, he has no reaction. He's not angry, hurt, anything. He doesn't even get a token apology from her. Katie, monster that she is, realizes the error of her ways due to the script running out of time, presumably, and is gonna stop being so manipulative and possessive of her father from now on. It's just so rushed! The conflict between stepmom and stepdaughter is not at all cathartic to me, a former traumatized stepchild, therefore it is objectively bad. No, I'm kidding. B is a patient and loving stepmother, even though Katie really doesn't deserve it. Kill her with kindness, I guess, is B's tactic. There's some good interaction between our boys, too. Light, supportive banter, and then, of course, Buzz flipping out when he thinks Todd's gonna run off with Katie. But that's classic Buzz abandonment issues Murdoch, and I love him. And I think Maharis was right about toning down Buzz being protective. His caring is evident, but he's gonna be supportive. The only time he steps in is when Katie's trying to get Todd to run away. Overall, I would say that this episode is slightly above mid-tier Route 66, but not quite top tier. Like I said, I do think it's an interesting episode, and for whatever reason, I come back to it quite a bit. I got a lot of research for this episode from the book Route 66, the television series by James Rosen. He's got quite a few books on television series. I also have his Streets of San Francisco book. And that's it for me this time. I'll try to be back with some Christmas episodes, and of course I'll be back with some ASJ episodes too. You can follow me on Blue Sky at 20th Century Tab. See you next time.